I'm going to show you how to finish a neck edge or an arm edge, an arm opening, by putting a facing there. I'm going to actually use 2 different fabrics so that you can see what I do. So first you cut out the pattern pieces. And that's what these look like. And this one was cut on the fold because when you cut it on the fold like this, and you unfold it, you have a full circle. Same thing with this one. Cut that on the fold, and then you unfold it, and it's the full piece. So then once you cut out your pieces, I did some interfacing on the back, and that's really important to stabilize the neckline or the shoulder line. Whatever your facing is, it's really important to have the facing piece have some interfacing on it. And then you need to finish the edge. I serged it. You can turn it under and stitch it down if you would like. If you don't have a serger, you could zigzag around the edge, whatever your preferred method of finishing it is. And then I find the center, because in the process of ironing the interfacing on, you lose that fold that you had when you laid out your pattern. So I just fold that in half again. You know what? I'm going to actually use this fabric so that you can see right side and wrong side. So then my fabric for my bodice piece is still creased. The center is still visible. And this is the right side of my fabric. And it's tempting to just say, oh, this is how it's supposed to be, and put it like this. But actually, once we stitch it and flip it, it's not going to be correct. So we want to actually go right sides together, so pretty sides together. And then we find our center of each piece. And then we just line them up and pin them. Pin that center. Then you line up the notches and pin the rest of the way around. We're going to do a 5/8 inch seam allowance on this neckline. And you just want a regular stitch length on your machine. You just want to be careful to keep working around the curve. You want to be patient with this sharp curve. It will stay consistently 5/8 inch if you're steady and careful. Okay, here's our 5/8 inch seam allowance. Take out our pins, and then we're going to grade our seams, which means cut some of the width off so that there's not just a big chunk of fabric on the inside of our garment. So I like to find the thickest seam allowance, which is this one with the interfacing attached, and I cut it almost in half, that width. Just do that all the way around. And then I like to trim the other one about 1/8 of an inch wider than that, so that there's not a lot of extra fabric inside the seam allowance once you turn your facing the correct way. So that's what grading your seams should look like. Now we need to clip our seam. So we're going to turn this around this way and use just the very tip of our scissors. We're just going to use the very tip of our scissors, and we're going to clip almost to the stitches, but not ever through the stitches. About every 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, depending on, usually the tighter the curve, the closer your clips have to be. It's tempting to do this and kind of go all around like that, but you can actually slip really easily and accidentally cut clear through your stitches and your fabric. So you want to just use the very edge of the tip of your scissors here, and you just literally clip all the way around. I think it's easier to keep the bottom blade of your scissors on your work surface and then just open little bites all the way around. Okay, so that's kind of what that looks like. And now we're going to press, we're going to flip it so right side down with our bodice here. And we're just going to press the seam allowance toward the facing side, all the way across, toward the facing. Notice on this one, there's no stitches on the outside of our garment here. You don't see any top stitching or anything, and that's because we pressed our seam allowance towards the facing side, and then we did something called understitching, and we stitched just the facing and the seam allowances together, and we keep the garment side free from top stitching. So that's what we're going to do now, and it's going to be a lot easier to stitch that way now that we've pressed our seam allowance toward the facing. So now we're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to stitch. So here's our seam right here. We're going to stitch right here next to it all the way around our facing. This corner right inside my presser foot is a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So if I just line that up with the edge of my seam here, that will give me a nice top stitched understitching. We're understitching and keeping the seam allowance permanently on the facing side. Don't forget to reverse when you start. The only time that you skip reversing is if you're basting or doing a gathering stitch, which is still basting. You kind of smooth out the shape here under the presser foot and make sure that it's only smooth, and here is our corner lined up with our seam. So that's what the understitching should look like on the facing side. That's what it should look like underneath on the facing side. And then we're going to press it. So there's the inside of our garment. And then we'll press it, and here's the outside, and you don't see any stitching, but also our facing is permanently being rolled to the inside, so it shouldn't creep out and do something like this while you're wearing it. It should stay where it's supposed to be. So now we are going to iron that facing now that we've understitched it. So you just want to kind of make sure that the edge of your bodice neckline is where it was meant to be, and you just follow that around, and you have a nice finished edge without a lot of bulk, and there are no stitches visible on the front of the bodice.